All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope all of you guys had an incredible weekend. We are live on AMP, so if you're watching on YouTube or listening on our podcast feeds, don't forget that AMP is the very first place that you guys can get these shows. We have 3 preseason games we're going to be reacting to today, the 3 debuts for some of the biggest trade targets from this summer. Chris Paul in his debut with the Golden State Warriors in a win against the Los Angeles Lakers on Saturday night. And then on Sunday, we had Jrue Holiday make his debut with the Boston Celtics. We're going to talk about that game. And then last but not least, Bradley Beal makes his debut with the Phoenix Suns as they light the Pistons on fire, hanging 46 points in the first quarter. Lots to talk about there. We're going to hit all 6 of those teams, at least to some extent. And then I've got 2 mailbag questions for the end of the show as well. You guys know the drill before we get started. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, under Hoops Tonight. And last but not least, I need more mailbag questions. Keep dropping mailbag questions in the comments so we can keep hitting them at the end of the shows. All right, so let's talk some basketball. Chris Paul, big shock, fit in immediately with the Golden State Warriors offense. They were able to kind of use him in 2 ways. Obviously, with Draymond out of the lineup right now with that ankle injury, they need someone who can make passes to their off-ball actions, and you saw Chris Paul do some of that, basically acting as the fulcrum as Steph and Clay were running around on screens, and then he's thrived in the on-ball stuff, which, again, there was some debate because Chris Paul basically didn't run this type of offense at all over the course of the rest of his career, at least relative to what most teams in the league do. And so there was some question as to whether or not he'd be able to operate in a 5-out system that's less heliocentric and more, read and react and operating off the ball. But he did just fine. Synergy logged him at 4 pick and rolls. I had him at 5 in my rewatch. There was a ball screen on the right wing where he took a dribble handoff from Looney, but he didn't actually use the dribble handoff. He turned around and used it as a ball screen. So on those 5 possessions, the 5 pick and rolls, the Warriors scored 9 points, which is 1.8 points per possession. He's benefiting immediately from Kevon Looney as a screener. He's one of the best screeners in the league, and he can catch and finish around the rim. Big shock. He's going to be just fine in this system. I do think there will be some growing pains over the course of the beginning of the season, just with understanding that everything is still in motion and you don't want to stop the basketball. But I didn't see much of that in their first game, and things looked pretty smooth offensively. There was a specific play on the right wing that I thought demonstrated the kind of shots he's going to get in this offense. There was Steph Curry was on the right wing, and Chris Paul's in the right corner. Looney runs a dribble handoff with Steph. Steph doesn't take Looney doesn't actually hand him the ball, and then flows into a dribble handoff with Chris Paul. Steph runs through. Clay and Andrew Wiggins kind of switch places on the weak side. All the help defenders are occupied. So you have like a real cleared side pick and roll for Looney and Chris Paul. And on the play, the reason why he rejected the dribble handoff was Jared Vanderbilt actually ducks under the pick and meets Chris Paul on the other side. But because Looney and Chris Paul are both smart players in these 2-man games, instead of trying to use the dribble handoff and run right into Vando, Chris Paul turns around and runs a ball screen with Looney. Looney turns and reverses angle and sets the screen. Chris gets a wide open 15-footer along the baseline that he makes. Like the screening thing, I think, is going to be the biggest one that catches everyone off guard, is just how good of a screener Kevon Looney is compared to some of the recent players that Chris Paul has played with and the type of advantages he's going to get. There was another floater that Chris Paul made in the first half where Gabe Vincent was trying to chase Chris Paul over the screen, and Looney just set a brick wall screen and squared Vincent up, and Chris Paul had all the separation in the world. And as soon as Looney got downhill in his roll, the screen defender hopped over to him, and Chris Paul had just a wide open floater in the lane. I actually think Chris is going to be a very efficient pick and roll, dribble handoff, and off-screen player with the Warriors, because I actually think he's going to get more separation than he has in any of these situations in the past. They also ran a ghost screen with Steph Curry. You guys might remember this one where Vincent's guarding Steph, and Steph just kind of runs up to set a ball screen on Chris, but then just quickly juts to the top of the key, and Chris hits him for a catch-and-shoot 3. They're just going to play a lot of really easy basketball together. My concerns with Chris Paul are not about the offensive fit. It's just mostly about whether or not you can afford to play him alongside Steph and Klay from a size perspective. That depends on Klay doing things like defending power forwards. And there was some encouraging stuff there, right? When we saw Rui Hachimura on back-to-back possessions try to back Klay Thompson down on the left block and get stripped and basically be rendered useless. And Klay's running over to the other end and talking shit. It was kind of a cool competitive moment. Klay is an underrated big player. I'm less concerned about his ability to guard in the post. Obviously, it's one thing guarding LeBron, but like I'm less concerned about him guarding in the post and more concerned about rebounding and what they can do as a group in rotation with that type of size and athleticism on the floor. But offensively, the Chris Paul thing is going to work. It's just there's too much basketball skill and IQ for it not to. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody both had big nights. They combined for 39 points. They made 6 threes between the two of them. Both had kind of static shot creation moments. You saw Jonathan Kuminga on that play where he got a switch on Taurean Prince and quick ducked in and got a foul. And on the very next possession, Steve Kerr actually drew up a post up for him and didn't get settle for some tough shot. He made a really aggressive rip to the baseline and then spun back to the middle and elevated over the top of Taurean Prince and knocked down that little floater for the and one. Moses Moody had a similar play where he caught Taurean Prince on the left wing in kind of a closeout situation, and he had a really nice rip through right towards the middle, and Taurean Prince cut him off, and he just countered with turning and fading into a right shoulder fadeaway jump shot that he knocked down. The two of them combined to go 3 for 4 on pull-up jump shots. They both had plays attacking closeouts. Jonathan Kuminga had that dribble handoff where he got downhill and elevated over Anthony Davis and made that left-handed layup, which was so ridiculous. What you're seeing from those two is the top end stuff, right? And like both of these guys are going to be really good NBA basketball players for a long time. And again, like it's exciting to see that top end stuff, but at the end of the day, what's going to be most important for both of those two are can they be impactful defensively and can they be reliable offensively? Because that's going to be what keeps them on the floor in any sort of playoff setting. Like, I mean, obviously Jonathan Kuminga post-ups and Moses Moody ISOs are great things to have in your back pocket over the course of an 82-game regular season, but you're not tossing the ball down to Jonathan Kuminga in a playoff series in the second and third round. So, like, it's encouraging and that's exciting stuff. I'm not trying to diminish that at all. Obviously, the top end is insane. Jonathan Kuminga legitimately has the potential to be a star. So, like, I'm not trying to minimize that at all. I'm just saying within the short-term window of the Steph Curry, 1 to 2 years left of him being at this like absolute top tier superstar level, potentially 2 or 3 years, right? You need to get impactful winning playoff minutes out of them. So that's where I'm looking to monitor those two more over the course of the season. Like that stuff is exciting, but let's look at the details over the course of the season. Brandon Podziemski, I thought had a really impressive, especially in the first half. He got attacked a little bit on defense in the second half, but he held up really well in the first half. He was giving Jalen Hood-Schifino some problems with his strength. He stonewalled Max Christie on an ISO as well. He actually looked pretty damn good defensively in the first half. He ran 13 ball screens for 13 points. That's really good, for a first time ever setting foot on an NBA court to get a point per possession in those situations. They're running action for him again in this Warriors system that gets him in positions where he's at his best, which is getting downhill with the defender in trail position because of how strong he is. There was a really nice play with Jalen Hood-Schifino where he came off of a dribble handoff on the left wing, getting downhill towards his right hand, and Hood-Schifino was in trail position, and he just took a power dribble into the lane, and Hood-Schifino overcorrected back towards that right hand, and he pivoted back with his left hand to a little shot in the lane. Because of how strong he is and how good he is with that touch shot in the lane, that's a shot he's going to be able to get in this Warriors offense. I thought overall he looked really, really effective and useful in that Warriors offense. He had a closeout attack against Tayshaun Prince that was really impressive too. So catches on the left wing. He's going to get a lot of these kinds of shots because these are the kinds of shots that Dante DiVincenzo was getting in the offense. But he's on the left side, catches on a kick out when the defense is in rotation. Taurean Prince closes out hard at his right hand, at his left hand, right, which is probably the scouting port on Podziemski, and he rips through to the right. And same sort of thing, Taurean Prince is overplaying that right hand. He does a hard Euro step back over to his left and finishes on the left side of the rim. I thought it was an impressive first game for Brandon Podziemski. Obviously, there was some concern about his shooting in Summer League. I'm just not worried about that at all. So nice start to the preseason for the Warriors. They looked really energetic last night, to say the least. Anthony Davis looked fantastic for the Lakers. Was just cooking, just straight up barbecuing Kevon Looney and straight up dribble ISOs to start the game. Got 3 buckets on him, including an and one there. He hit 2 threes. They both looked really smooth. The biggest thing that stood out to me on tape is the release looks quicker. Over the last couple of years, Anthony Davis's release slowed down, which really hurt his energy transfer. And he was leaving a lot of shots short on the rim. Back in the bubble, his shot was quick and there was like real rhythm and flow to it. And it looked a lot better in the 2 threes that he made on Saturday night. And to put it simply, Anthony Davis, when he's making his jump shot, is a top-tier superstar. End of story. Like, to me, you have your top tier, right, which is guys like Jokic and Giannis and Steph, and then there's a little bit of a drop-off, just a little bit, and Anthony Davis is in that next tier. When Anthony Davis is making his jump shot the way he did in the bubble, he's on that top tier because he's the best defensive player in the world at 28 points a night efficiently. That's hard to hang with, right? But when that jump shot goes away, now he's more in that like 24, 25 points a night, and he's not as effective as a half-court shot maker. That's where he kind of diminishes in his impact to that next tier. But like, that's something to keep an eye on this season because like I said, and we're going to talk more about this in a mailbag question at the end of the show, but Anthony Davis and his shot making is one of the biggest swing factors for the Lakers and their ability to potentially win a championship. Gabe Vincent, I thought his point of attack defense was really impressive, and that's exciting because this is a specific area of opportunity for the Lakers. He did a really nice job navigating screens and applying ball pressure in their pick and roll coverages. He knocked down 2 threes. Obviously, his spot-up shooting is going to be a value. I think he's going to be a really nice fit with LeBron. He made 2 skip passes in pick and roll. Again, I talk about this a lot, but that's, to me, the most impressive read in pick and rolls when you can identify that the low man is coming over to defend the action 3-on-2 and you hit that shooter in the weak side corner. Most offensive players either don't see it or are physically incapable of making the pass, and Gabe Vincent made that pass twice for wide open threes last night. I thought that was impressive. D'Angelo Russell had a really nice game. He was aggressive and productive in pick and roll. He ran 14 pick and rolls, leading to 17 points. It's well over a point per possession. And that's despite him going just 1 for 5 on pull-up jump shots. He was missing that little pullback 2 that he likes to take where he kind of does that dramatic pump fake and then kind of leans back. He made 1 of them, but he missed a couple more. Had some good roll man chemistry with Jackson Hayes. There was definitely a more natural pick and roll flow with Jackson Hayes than there was with Christian Wood, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Max Christie made 4 jump shots, including 2 catch-and-shoot jump shots, and then he hit 2 jump shots against drop coverage where the screen defender was back and he got separation and he elevated and knocked down 15-footers. And then again, like he's theoretically, and I didn't see too much of this last night, or on Saturday night, but theoretically he can be one of their best perimeter defenders, and he's one of those guys that I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up cracking the rotation and playing a significant role if he can make enough jump shots and if he can defend well enough on the perimeter. Jalen Hood-Schifino had a rough shooting night. He was 1 for 5 on jump shots and 1 for 5 at the rim. But he did have some moments in pick and roll shot creation where, like, especially when he would get defenders in jail. Now, what that means, what does that mean to get a defender in jail? When you come over the top of a ball screen and the defender's trailing you, instead of going downhill, you identify that the defender's behind you and you slow down and you basically are doing like a reverse post-up. Like you're slowly working downhill while pinning the defender on your backside. He had a play where he got downhill on pick and roll and got Podziemski into a trail position, and he just kind of worked downhill until Jonathan Kuminga left Cam Reddish in the corner to help on the pick and roll, and then he made the kick out pass to Kuminga in the corner. Again, wasn't an impressive game overall from Jalen Hood-Schifino from the standpoint of his production, but he did have a couple of plays there where he used his size and pick and roll to create good shots, and that's something that he's going to have to learn how to replicate. Last note on the Lakers, Cam Reddish and Christian Wood both struggled. They were 2 for 12 from the field with 4 turnovers. Looked like they were kind of out of place most of the time and didn't know what to do. This is the adjustment of learning how to play with a team like this. Like there were a couple possessions where like they're just for no reason. Both of them did it in the first half. Where like for no reason in semi-transition, they just try to dribble into like 3 dudes and turn the ball over. Christian Wood did it and Cam Reddish did it once. There's a play where Cam Reddish came like flying off of a wide screen at the top of the key, and he just like turned and fired like he was Klay Thompson, like just left foot, right foot, drifting in midair. Just an incredibly difficult shot, even for the best shooters in the world, and Cam Reddish took it. And it's like, hey, man, like that's not what they necessarily need you for. And again, like you're not trying to tell players that are good offensive players not to be aggressive. You're just trying to tell them to be aggressive in the flow of the offense. Like for Cam Reddish, what you're asking for is elite point of attack defense, because that's something he's capable of, even though he hasn't done it in the NBA. And you're asking him to be a reliable spot-up threat. So that means hitting catch-and-shoot threes and attacking closeouts. Be aggressive attacking closeouts, not at the beginning of possessions, because there are better players for you in that role. For Christian Wood, it's aggression, but it's aggression in pick and pop and in short roll situations, not just going freelance. Like just when you pick and pop to the top of the key, if you're open, shoot that thing every single time. When they chase you off the line, attack the closeout and make a play. And then obviously Christian Wood has to focus his resources to the defensive end of the floor, because Jackson Hayes, as limited as he can be defensively, he's a better defensive player than Christian Wood right now. So like those are the things that they're just going to have to figure out over time. For those two guys, I want to wait at least a month or two, because they're going to have to figure out where their role is on this team and how it's different than it is on other teams.
For a limited time, Verizon customers can get Netflix and NFL Plus for just $25 a month with Plus Play. That's $120 of annual savings. Plus Play is a platform where Verizon customers can shop, manage, and save on subscriptions you already love, like Netflix and NFL Plus. With NFL Plus Premium, you get access to live games on mobile, NFL Red Zone, NFL Network, and more. Just go to Verizon.com/Plus Play to bundle and save on Netflix and NFL Plus today for a limited time only.
The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweeter offer every game day this October. There are 8 games this weekend that have point spreads that are either 3 or smaller than 3. Lots of good betting opportunities for you guys to take advantage of. Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet 5 on the NFL. That's code HOOPS, HOOPS, only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. All right, let's move on to Celtics Sixers. So I thought it was really interesting that the Celtics started both Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, especially since Rob Williams is no longer with the team. I figured they would go with more of a staggering approach there. But most importantly, it puts you in the predicament of having to put one of your better players on the bench. So like Derek White starts alongside Tatum and Brown, and then you go Horford and Porzingis, and that brings Jrue Holiday off the bench. And, you know, when you're ranking the players on the team, you're probably ranking Tatum first, and then Jaylen Brown, and then Porzingis, and then you're probably ranking Derek White and Jrue Holiday, right? And so, like, to me, I just like the idea of playing your 5 best players together as much as possible. And then it's easy to stagger from there because you have 5 damn good players. You have 5 players who are all definitively top 40 in the NBA. All right, so at least 4 of them are top 40. And then depending on where you have Derek White, like he's probably not too far behind there. He's probably in that 40 to 50 range. So you have like 5 like bona fide, not just starter quality players, but above average starter quality players. So like I like the idea of playing them together. It was an interesting strategy. Porzingis was freaking awesome to start this game. He had this early stretch it was like, you know, a third halfway through the first quarter. So they run a pick and roll on the right side of the floor with Jason Tatum. And I want to say it was Daniel House and Paul Reed that were in the action. So Paul Reed's on Porzingis and Daniel House is on Tatum. And as Tatum comes off the ball screen, Paul Reed shows way high to try to take away that pull-up 3 that Jason Tatum loves to take, right? Porzingis short rolls to the corner. Daniel House identifies that Paul Reed has come out too high to recover, so Daniel House abandons Tatum and recovers back to the post. But he's not really set. He's kind of sprinting back into the play. Tatum identifies it, throws that bounce pass to Porzingis in the post. Porzingis turns and faces and just throws a vicious jab step towards the baseline. And Daniel House just goes flying out of bounds, like literally just falls over on the move. And Porzingis goes into the lane off of the jab step and dunks it with 2 hands. That's that a switch beating part of their attack that they didn't have last year. Like Horford, maybe in his prime, could have made that play consistently, but Horford at this phase in his career, he's just only going to get a bucket on that switch every once in a while, right? Like Porzingis is like, oh wait, I've got a small player closing out at me in the post. I'm dunking this every time. Like he's just another level of player there, right? So like he beats the switch in the post. Then on the other end of the floor, he ends up with Tobias Harris on a switch on defense. Tobias is in the left corner, and he's working Porzingis off the dribble, drives into the lane, and Porzingis does a nice job of sliding his feet and staying in front. It ends up getting handed off to Daniel House coming through the lane. Porzingis switches onto House, once again stays on his feet, doesn't leave his feet and put himself in a position where he's going to foul because he doesn't need to. He's too damn big. Walls up, and Daniel House ends up throwing up some janky little floater in the lane, and he gets a stop. Then they go down to the other end of the floor. This is, I think, was 2 possessions later. And he runs a pick and roll with Derek White and rolls hard to the rim. And Derek White throws it up. And Porzingis just dunks on the entire team on a lob. Just like a vicious dunk on the lob and pick and roll. And it's like, that's a 3-play sequence that demonstrates what the difference is between Kristaps Porzingis and what you had in the past. Because you were able to beat a switch and pick and roll, something that Robert Williams and Al Horford both struggled with, right? Then on the other end of the floor, you have Porzingis defending on the perimeter against switches. And then on the other end of the floor, you have a real vertical spacing threat, which is something that only Robert Williams could do. So you're taking the best qualities of Horford and Robert Williams, and you're bringing them together, and they're better versions of those qualities. I don't think Porzingis is quite as good of a defender as Robert Williams, but he's close. And when you look at that and you combine it with what he can do offensively, it's a major ceiling raiser. There's another play later in the first half where he's sitting there with the dribble handoff out at the top of the key for Jaylen Brown. And Mo Bamba is pressing way up on Porzingis, like ball pressuring the hell out of him. And Mo Bamba's over 7 feet tall. Jaylen Brown is getting overplayed, like top locked on the dribble handoff, and so he back cuts, and he's wide open going down the lane. And a lot of players can't make that pass out of the center position. Porzingis literally was shielding Mo Bamba off in a full pressure situation and throws a hook pass over the top that hits Jaylen Brown in stride for a dunk. That's just higher level offense. He's just a better player at that position than what they've had in the past. And that's the exciting part with this year's Celtics team. They're demonstrably better at center, and they're demonstrably better at point guard with the same 3 guys in between in Derek White, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. They're not as deep. Obviously, injuries are going to play a role in the potential success of this team, but if they get to the postseason and they're healthy, they're just going to be a much bigger pain in the ass to deal with than Celtics teams that we've seen in the past. Kristaps finished with 17 points on 7 shots. Jrue Holiday ended up coming in off the bench about halfway through the first quarter for Jason Tatum, which again, like that's the predicament you put yourself in when you put one of your best players on the bench. Like you're starting that staggering process, and that's great and all for the rotation and blah, 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 blah. But in my opinion, you want to give those core 5 guys as many minutes together as possible because that's the group you're going down with in the postseason. Give them reps. Let them build continuity. So again, like that's just me personally disagreeing with that thought process. Obviously, it's not going to make or break the Celtics season or anything like that, but that's just my personal opinion there. Jrue made a couple of pull-up threes, one off of an offensive rebound and one off of like kind of like a wild step back on the left wing in an ISO, but he missed all 8 of the rest of his shots. He looked a little bit out of place offensively, but that's somewhat to be expected. The Celtics play an entirely different style than Milwaukee. I'd refer to it as like a drive and kick style for the Celtics versus more of like a old-fashioned pick and roll, like shot creation offense like you saw with the Bucks with Jrue Holiday. What I mean by that is like the Bucks didn't have a lot of aggregate ball handling. Like they had Middleton, they had Jrue, they had Giannis, but it was those guys who ran all the action, and then the other guys were mostly spot up players, right? Like you're not expecting to run drive and kick basketball with Brook Lopez, right? You're not expecting to run drive and kick basketball with Pat Connaughton or Wesley Matthews or some of those guys that aren't as good putting the ball on the floor. Grayson Allen was okay, but there wasn't a lot of talent putting the ball on the floor down the roster. So it was a lot of spread the floor, give the ball to Jrue, let him run pick and roll. Spread the floor, give the ball to Giannis, run inverted pick and roll. Spread the floor, give the ball to Giannis. He's going to try to isolate downhill, right? Or give the ball to Chris Middleton. He's going to run a pick and roll, or he's going to go down to the post and post up some smaller defenders. A lot of like brute force offense. I'll give you an idea. Jrue Holiday only ran 1 pick and roll last night for the Celtics. He ran 15 a game when he was in Milwaukee. Boston, they actually run a lot more action, and they will try a bunch of different ways to get downhill. It'll be Tatum as a screener, slipping. It'll be running a dribble handoff for Derek White to get that initial advantage. It'll be Jaylen Brown back cutting out of a dribble handoff, right? Like, it'll be any of the guys because they always have 4 or 5 guys on the floor that can put the ball on the floor and make plays. And so as a result of that, like, they can really run drive and kick offense where they don't need to slow down and spread you out and run 1 pick and roll. They just got to get the defense in rotation to some extent. And from there, they just play basketball. And they just have too many guys on the floor that can make plays. And so I think with Jrue Holiday, it's going to be an adjustment. But he is a better basketball player, in my opinion, than Marcus Smart, even on the offensive end. So in time, he's going to figure that out. But that's all the more reason for him to move into the starting lineup, in my opinion, because he needs reps with those guys. He needs to learn how to play with those guys so that he doesn't get, caught off guard when you get to a late postseason situation and everyone still feels weird about it. Peyton Pritchard looked really nice, fresh off of signing a contract extension. He dropped 26 points on 14 shots. He hit 5 pull-up threes in that game, including a nasty between-the-leg step back on the left wing. On the Sixers front, they sat James Harden and Joel Embiid. They did come out. I'm sure you Celtics fans noticed this in Philly. This is kind of jarring, but they came out with a crazy defensive intensity that I'm not used to seeing from Philadelphia, and I think that's Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is a very aggressive defensive coach. He's a big believer in ball pressure and help. He's going to pack the paint. He's going to double. He's going to blitz. He's going to do all that super aggressive stuff to challenge your playmaking. He's going to leave open players on the weak side. That's the rub on Nick Nurse, is he gives up a ton of wide open shots by overhelping. But that intensity was jarring off the screen early, and it caught Boston off guard as Philly jumped out to a little bit of an early lead. Tyrese Maxey was just absolutely cooking early. He hit 4 of his 9 pull-up jump shots, including 2 threes off the dribble. He ran 11 pick and rolls for 13 points. He was 3 for 3 at the rim. Tyrese Maxey, like, here's the thing. There's kind of like this group of 2 guards that you look at that all are kind of from that same period, right? Like, it's Tyrese Maxey and Tyler Herro and Jordan Poole. I think Tyrese Maxey's clearly the best player out of those 3 guys. And if he takes a leap and he is a legit, over 50% effective field goal percentage pull-up jump shooter who can play make out of pick and roll and do all of those things, like, it makes it so that you don't need Harden as much. And then it makes it more sensical for you to move him for multiple usable role players, right? That's kind of my take, is like, James Harden's a great regular season innings eater, but we saw once again last year in the postseason, his impact dips below to a point where it's borderline hurting the team. And so Tyrese Maxey and his development is one of the things that could be a saving grace for this team. It's kind of like, oh my goodness, the Russell Westbrook experiment. It miserably failed for the Lakers. Oh wait, Austin Reeves is incredible. Now everything's going to be fine, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that you're hoping for with Tyrese Maxey. Moving on to Suns Pistons. It kind of looked exactly like you would expect it to look. KD and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal just taking turns running action, whether it's a dribble handoff or coming off of a wide pin down or running pick and roll. You'd see Booker working off. Booker and KD both did some work off of that Iverson cut where they basically set a screen right at the foul line, and you have the ball on the left wing, and you have the player you're trying to get the ball to on the right wing, and you have him cut off of that guy, and he catches in kind of the mid post on the left side with a cleared side with the defender in trail position so he can rip through to the baseline, right? And they'll run that with Kevin Durant. They'll run that with Devin Booker. Well, it doesn't matter what action they run. It turns into Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal looking to take pull-up jump shots. And the 3 of those guys combined to take 21 shot attempts, and 15 of those 21 shot attempts were pull-up jump shots. And they made 8 of them. They were making them. And that's what it's going to be a lot this year. And again, think about that. That's over 70% of their shot attempts were pull-up jump shots. And again, it worked. And what was crazy is there was a lot of talk about them playing off the ball and their ability to capitalize on spot up situations. Those three guys combined to take one catch and shoot jump shot, and it was a transition three from Bradley Beal in the left corner. So it's really just talk about brute force. It's really just those guys coming off of screens and taking jump shots. Now, again, and we're going to get to some other elements, but I want to zoom in on this pull up jump shooting offense for a minute, because this is where it gets tricky. Because I was talking with Eddie Gonzalez about this morning, and he made this point where he's like, this is where the openings are. Teams are trying to funnel you to the paint. They're trying to protect the paint with rim protection, and they're trying to chase you off the three-point line, right? So theoretically, the soft spot in NBA defenses is in the mid-range. That's a fact, right? We talk about pick and roll coverage. You come off a ball screen, the defender's job is just to chase you, even if he's behind you, even if he's not attached. The opening is in the mid-range before you run into the rim protector, right? And so it is true that this is where the soft spot is in modern NBA defense. And in theory, if you can make them at a high enough rate, that can be enough to win you a championship. The question is can you make them at a high enough rate? We talked about this with the Nuggets, the idea of unguardability. The defense is willing to concede anything that's around a point per possession or less in the half court, right? If they think you're going to take a bunch of pull-up twos but only make half of them, they're probably going to live with that, right? Especially if it's a little bit below half. In the Nuggets series last year, in their 4 losses, the Suns shot 39.7% on pull-up jump shots, or 44% when weighted for threes. So 44% in effective field goal percentage. That's 0.88 points per shot. So we can talk about, the Denver Nuggets, they're giving up these shots and drop coverage to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, but at the end of the day, they were scoring, that's 0.88 points per shot. That's something the defense can live with. So again, I'm not criticizing the offense. The offense can work, and it did last night. They scored well over a point per possession on pull-up jump shots last night. The question is, can they do it in the later rounds of the postseason? When it gets more physical, when you face better perimeter defenders, and those shots tend to dip in quality, right? And so that's going to be the thing. People used to say this about the Warriors, right? Can they win a title shooting threes? Now, obviously, they overlooked how good defensively that team was, and that arguably was the biggest reason why they won. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say they can't do it, because everyone used to say that about the Warriors. They can't win shooting threes. Well, then they won shooting threes, right? So I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying this is how it has to happen. If Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant are going to rely primarily on a diet of pull-up jump shots, they need to make them at a rate well over a point per possession, because then it becomes untenable for the defense. If it becomes untenable for the defense, then you're going to have to start coming way out higher in pick and roll, and then that's what's going to open up all the stuff in rotation for guys like Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen and everybody on the weak side, right? That's what's going to make it so that Yusuf Nurkic has the short roll opportunities to pick you apart in 4-on-3s. Everything's going to come down to whether or not they can make those shots. Defensively, I'm not going to talk about it too much, because they played a really limited Pistons team offensively. They played 2 non-shooting bigs in Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren, alongside Ausar Thompson and Cade Cunningham and Alec Burks. So I'm going to wait to do a deeper dive into their defense until they play a higher powered offense. But I did think it was interesting that they decided to start Josh Okogie. And we talked about this a lot in their season preview, which, by the way, we did on Sunday. So if you Suns fans haven't seen it, the full season preview of the Suns is on our feed if you scroll just a little bit further back. But we talked about whether or not it made sense for them to go all in on offense or defense, right? And I did think it was interesting that they went in on defense. Not a big shock from Frank Vogel, right? Frank Vogel's drop coverage is the anchor of his entire defensive thought process, right? And it utterly depends on a guard who can chase over the top of screens. And so I understand why they went with Josh Okogie in that specific position, and it worked well. And Okogie actually did a nice job kind of attacking offensively in that unit as well. But I don't want to talk too much about the Suns' defense until we get further along in the preseason. On the Detroit front, it was funny. Ausar Thompson stole the show. Cade Cunningham actually really struggled. He was 1 for 9 on pull-up jumpers and 0 for 1 on free floaters, so he was 1 for 10 basically on shot making in the game. And He had a couple of nice pocket passes to Jalen Durant and Isaiah Stewart for buckets. He had a nice lob to Marvin Bagley, had some playmaking. But like, Ausar Thompson stole the show. Everyone remembers the three-pointer in the corner that sent the game to OT, but he flashed a lot of really high-level possessions of point-of-attack defense and navigating screens. He was flat-out causing problems for Eric Gordon, sidling up over the top of screens and staying attached to him. He had a possession where Devin Booker tried to isolate him downhill to his left hand, and Ausar just literally swallowed it up and like blocked it with two hands up top. It was unbelievable defensive play. He had 6 assists. He had a really nice dribble handoff coming off the left wing or off the right wing to his left hand where he got downhill and then made a wraparound pass to Jalen Durant. That was really impressive. A couple of nice transition feeds where he was getting downhill in transition, generating rim pressure, kicking to shooters, or there was another play where he dropped it off, I think, to Marvin Bagley, trailing the play. Just an impressive game from Ausar Thompson. You know, all the intel around him coming into the draft was that he's a basketball player, meaning like he's just a guy who's good at all the little things. And that stood out immediately, even more than his brother at Summer League when I was out there, and flashed in a big way again in the preseason yesterday. All right, let's move on to the mailbag. I've got 2 questions. First one, you said the Lakers could have flipped the Western Conference Finals as the games were close, and if James and Davis had shot better, then they would have won. What about the counter argument that there is an even higher off risk that the Lakers lose to the Warriors? 2 of the Lakers' wins were by 3 and 5 points. Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole shot further below their average than James and Davis did against the Nuggets. I would argue there's a better chance of the Warriors beating the Lakers than the Lakers beating the Nuggets. Here's the thing. I think all of them are close. I don't think any of these teams are really all that far apart from each other. I just think there are clear advantages that separate them. Like, I think the Nuggets are clearly a little bit better than the Lakers. And I think the Lakers are clearly a little bit better than the Warriors. And usually what happens in these situations is we look at, like, little details, like, oh, they kept it close, and think that means that you're right there. But the reality is the reason why you lost those close games was because of the gaps between your basketball teams. And this is true for both cases. So let's take a look at the Lakers Nuggets first. So Lakers fans, and I've said this as well, just as a demonstration of the fact that they are close, but I do think the Nuggets are clearly better. And that's the talking point you've all heard, which is the games were close, right? So you have 3 crunch time games, right? So 3 of the 4 wins came within 5 points with less than 5 minutes left. You know, LeBron famously misses a 3 in game 1 that would have tied it down the stretch. The game is tied at 113 when Jokic hits the game winner in game 4, right? Like, the games are this close, right? Even the one game that wasn't a clutch situation, the Lakers had an 11-point second half lead, right? So lots of indicators for the Lakers to be like, we're right there. But what happened? Every time it got close, LeBron and Anthony Davis couldn't make shots, and Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic could. Was that a fluke, or was that what happened all season? What happened all season was LeBron James and Anthony Davis struggled with clutch offense. What happened all season was the Nuggets were one of the most unguardable half-court offenses in the league. So yeah, the Lakers and all their advantages, and they have advantages. Like, the Lakers are a better defensive team than the Nuggets. They applied a ton of rim pressure. They actually did a lot of damage to the Nuggets in the paint over the meat and potatoes of the game. They performed much better offensively against Denver even than Phoenix did because they were actually attacking the weakest point of their defense, which is the back line. They had advantages, and those advantages were enough for the Lakers to keep it close. But then what happened? In a close basketball game, that is where the better team can out-execute the lesser team. And in those settings, all 4 times, although in the one game they just did it earlier in the fourth quarter, all 4 times, the Nuggets executed consistently in the half court, got great shots, made them, and on the other end of the floor, the Lakers couldn't. So, yeah, they were close, but it's not like, oh, we flipped a coin 4 times, and all 4 times it went Nuggets. The Nuggets are better at that. So, unless there is a marked improvement from the Lakers in their clutch time offense, they are going to end up in the same predicament. Like, whenever we see these kinds of things happen, you have 2 responses. You can either be like, there's a real basketball reason why this happened and we should address it, or they just got lucky. And what do I always say on this show? If you focus on luck and things that are out of your control, that's a loser mentality. A winner mentality is to look at what you can do better to make sure you win. The Lakers are not as good as at the Nuggets at crunch time offense. That is why they lost. Unless they improve there, they will lose again. End of story. Moving on to the Lakers-Warriors, yeah, 2 of the games were really close, right? Like game 1, the Warriors go on a crazy run at the end of the game that ties the game. Game 4, they're up by 4 with 6 minutes left, and then Lonnie Walker gets hot and makes a bunch of shots and they lose, right? So, yeah, theoretically, it was 2 blowouts for each team, and then the 2 close games went to the Lakers. But what was the core problem for the Warriors all series? Whenever the Lakers really locked in defensively, the Warriors couldn't score. That's what led to those blowouts. In Game 6, the Lakers locked in defensively and the Warriors couldn't score. But the same thing happened in those crunch time situations. Yes, the Warriors went on a run to tie the game at the end of Game 1. Then what happened? They didn't score the rest of the game. Yes, they were up by 4 with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter of Game 4. Then what happened? They scored 7 points the rest of the entire game in 6 minutes. Again, when you get to these clutch situations, which team has the best punch is the team that's going to separate. The Nuggets' offensive punch was better considerably than the Lakers' defensive punch. They won all the close games. The Lakers' defensive punch was better than the Warriors' offensive punch in the late game situations. They won the games. The Warriors played 8 minutes of clutch time basketball against the Lakers in that second round series, and they scored 62.5 points per 100 possessions. A 62.5 offensive rating. That's less than 2/3 of a point per possession. So consistently throughout the series, when the Lakers really locked in half-court defense, the Warriors couldn't score. That's why you lost. And so, yeah, like if you're at home and you're like, we talked about this with the free throws, right? If you're focusing on it, like they shot more free throws than us. The Lakers literally attempted more free throws than any team in the league last year and held opponents to fewer free throws than any team in the league last year. The Warriors were literally dead last at getting free throws, and they were 23rd in the league at fouling the other team. So, like, if you're expecting to go back and get a different whistle, that's not what's going to happen. The only thing that will get you a different whistle is if you get better at not fouling and if you get better at drawing fouls. That's the winner mentality. That's focusing on the things that can be fixed. Right? And that's the same thing about this situation. You're right. You had 2 close games with the Lakers and you lost them both. And theoretically, if you flip those both, you win. But how do you flip those? By out-executing the other team in the half court at the end of a close game. That implies you have to learn how to score on the Laker defense that choked you out every single time the game was close late. That's the question. Will Chris Paul lift the Warriors' offensive potency enough in those situations? We will see. Will LeBron James and Anthony Davis improve as shot makers enough to even the gap with Denver? We will see. But for right now, I think the safe bet is Denver over LA and LA over Golden State in the Western Conference. And I'd actually smash the Suns in there between Golden State and the Lakers at this point. All right. Last mailbag question from Tamir. Hey, in your opinion, when do you think LeBron peaked as a basketball player and why? I'm always going to go with 2018 LeBron, mainly just from my core basketball philosophy, which is elite half-court shot creation is the most valuable skill in the league. Defensively, you need to be a good defense to win, in my opinion, unless you're unbelievably good like the Nuggets were. But at the end of the day, like you can coach and scheme around that to a certain extent. Even the 2016 Cavs, who were limited in defensive personnel, were actually a really good defense because they were coached really well and they committed to that end, right? That high-end offense will always be another level. And when I go back to like 2013 LeBron, he was clearly a much better defensive player than LeBron was by 2018. But by 2018, LeBron was still a good and impactful defensive player who also was the very best offensive player in the league, in my opinion. So, like, I'm always going to go with that version of LeBron. I think he kind of tailed off a little bit from there by the time he got to, because he was 33 in that season. By the time he got to age 35, which was the year he won his last finals MVP with the Lakers, he had gone down a little bit as an athlete, and he was still very, very good on both ends of the floor, but just, I think, a little bit worse than the player in 2018. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you supporting the show. We're going to move on with our power rankings tomorrow with number 4, and then we'll do more preseason reactions on some teams we haven't hit yet on Wednesday. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you then.